giving you the insider takes and the big picture view on the Dogs. This is On the Beat, presented by Ingles, with DawgNation insider Mike Griffith and Cody Chaffins.
Happy Monday evening to you, Cody Chaffins, Mike Griffith. Mike in Athens today. I'm in our studio today. It's a bye week, but boy, there's plenty to talk about after the weekend and Rocky Top. What comes to mind for me, Mike, the old Al Davis line, just win, baby. And the Dogs, at the end of the day, there's a W on that schedule.
Yeah, survive in advance. Kirby Smart said he told his players the way the league is now, it could be like this every week, and certainly with Alabama on deck, it looks to be quite a challenge.
Yeah, going to have to scratch and claw. They were certainly in a fist fight in Knoxville on Saturday, but the Dogs find a way to come out on top. That doesn't mean it was all peachy clean. There's plenty to look at. We will talk about actually what gave us a lot of confidence out of that win, because there's plenty of that. We hadn't seen Georgia in a big game yet this year. We've seen it now. So there's a lot that builds confidence for this Georgia team. Still definitely some concerns. And Mike, not going to sugarcoat things. We're always going to talk about that on this show. We will talk about it, even though some SEC coaches don't want you to ask the tough questions. We'll get to that coming up later in the show. We'll also share my boots on the ground. And boy, they were right in the middle of it all in Knoxville. We'll talk about that later. And we're also going to hit the first quarter of the season is over. We're going to take a quick look back at our superlatives and see how we're doing. But before we get going, the news coming out today, Gunner Stockton, SEC Offensive Player of the Week. Mike, you look at the line, 304 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 93.4 QBR. Can we say we've seen Gunner in a big game and he passed the test so far?
Yeah, and an oil painting moment on that beautiful throw there to London Humphreys. But like Kirby said, play of the game's the 2-point conversion. And boy, Zachariah Branch, I don't know if anybody can cover this guy. And I kind of wish Georgia would have gone to him a little bit more so it wouldn't have been so hard stopping. But what a great performance down the stretch by Gunner in the clutch. Of course, in overtime, all you had to do was hand off the ball. Second half drive, they took control, running it 13 out of 14 times. So Gunner is a complimentary player. You don't have to win it on his back. This offense is not designed for Gunner Stockton to carry the team. But when it came time for him to make plays, he did. And I thought that was a big game for Gunner Stockton in his growth, in his confidence, and I think for the team in general to win a game. Cody, you were down there, 90-degree heat index on the field. That was a hot one.
It was hot, and there, we spent all offseason kind of juggling this question, like when we get to these points where Georgia, we talk about Carson Beck last year at Georgia Tech, where you're going to have to go for it, and you're going to have to come from behind, you're going to have to throw the ball. Kirby Smart said after the game, we are not a team that needs Gunner Stockton to be throwing the ball 30 to 40 times a game. He says that plain. He had to throw it 31 times this past week. He said, we're not a team that's going to be built to come from behind. Well, they were able to come from 21-7 down right off the bat, it felt like. So do you have more confidence? What about Gunner's, the question marks we kind of had all off season, were some of those answered for you moving forward?
Yeah, they were. And the skill position was the real question, because if you're going to have a game manager for a quarterback who has some mobility, would we say that Gunner's mobility was a positive factor? I think it was some, probably not as much as they hoped. We heard Kirby Smart after the game talk about, for Gunner, instead of running to the sideline and trying to beat pursuit, step up into the pocket, run up the middle, and I think you'll find some of those, I think he said honey spots on the scramble. So maybe we see Gunner Stockton get a little bit more comfortable scrambling the ball in big games. Doing it in practice when they don't tackle you, that's not quite the same. But I thought Gunner made some really nice throws. I thought opening up early on with that throw to Kobe, I thought that was a really big throw to get Gunner's confidence going and kind of jumpstart the offense. We talked about slow offensive starts. I thought that was a fast start. I thought it was important to answer that touchdown. Still, though, they were down 21-7. And to your point, this is where Kirby Smart inserted himself into the game. 4th and 3, Georgia at their own 48, down 21-7 in the first quarter. That's a pretty stonesy call to go for a 4th down at midfield when you're already down 2 touchdowns. And the fact that Gunner was able to stand and deliver, and Zachariah Branch was able to get so open, and Mike Bobo knew that would be open and dialed that play up. Late in the game, Cody, it turned out there were a lot of these runs. I believe there were 11 runs called that Georgia hadn't run before. And the one that we saw Nate Frazier hit Tennessee for 21 yards on the first play in overtime, That was a shift that was inserted that Georgia picked up from the NFL, put in for that game. Mike Bobo saved it for that moment. There's plays like that. And so you got to give Mike Bobo credit for having that tool in the toolbox or that tool in his tool belt, knowing when to pull it out. It almost looked to me like Tennessee ran out of plays after the first quarter. Well, we're up 21-7. Now what do we do? You've shown us everything, and Georgia adjusts. And do you know that on the next 20 plays after the first quarter, Tennessee only gained 57 yards
Wow.
over 5 series,
And it
5
looks
possessions.
so easy right off the bat.
And but then all of a sudden, they gained 56 yards, and then all of a sudden, boom, they go deep to Brazel, a touchdown, and they're back in front by 1. Why? Because Georgia had some red zone issues. So that's one of the correctable things. Can't settle for field goals in this kind of game, Cody. Could have made it a lot easier on themselves if they would have punched that in for a touchdown once or twice.
For sure. We'll get to some more of those concerns because there are some. Besides Gunner Stockton, what else did you come away from this game feeling more confident in Georgia in?
The running backs. Boy, Josh McCray, think about this. I mean, we can, and people will, they're going to take note that Nitro Tuggle's tearing it up and Jamal Jarrett had a scoop and score. And of course, Carson Beck, the number 2 Heisman guy, looking like a number 1 pick. But Josh McCray, the transfer from Illinois, boy, was he big. 240 pounds. That's a battering ram. You're not stopping him. He knocks some guys back. And I know Kirby says size doesn't always matter, but I don't know if a 205-pounder is going to knock a ball linebacker back 2 yards in that goal line situation. That is a weapon that we did not know Kirby had ready in the arsenal. We knew when Josh got here, he had some conditioning work to do. The head coach in the program had him ready for prime time. So that is a big gold star for Kirby and his staff that this transfer from Illinois came in and it translated. London Humphreys, the transfer from Vanderbilt.
It's all
Kirby told us he liked this guy. He told us this guy was going to, we saw his number called a lot. And with the game on the line, 4th and 7 at the Tennessee 28. Tennessee is protecting the sticks, as Kirby calls them. They're thinking Georgia's just going to try to get the first down. Mike Bobo dials it up. He says, you know what? You're playing a short. We're going deep. We're going to run by you. That's a tough throw and an amazing catch, right? How many times did these guys practice this play? And for Gunner to do that in the clutch, in the moment, the pressure, the noise, he didn't think about what if I don't make it. He's like the squirrel going across the telephone pole or the telephone lines. He ain't thinking about falling. He's just thinking about getting. That's the winner. That's the poise. That's what Kirby Smart has seen in practice, right? We didn't see it. We didn't get to see this offense. It's not our fault, Cody. They didn't run this offense against Marshall and Austin Peay or in the G-Day game. We didn't say plays like this. Don't get mad at the fans, Kirby. You didn't show us this kid. You told us, but we never seen this. And we saw that clutch throw. How big was that? Finally, Zachariah Branch. How big is the transfer from USC? So again, they lost some key guys, but the door swings both ways. And without those 3 transfers, I feel confident saying Georgia does not win this football game.
Yeah, you really got to love what the staff is doing. You talk about, that's the other part, like general manager, another conversation we've had a ton. Can you find the right guys in the portal? But they found the right guys in the portal because they've all come in and made a difference. And yeah, talk about the confidence to have Josh McCray come in there, a guy who had not played very much, and say, I mean, all these guys that are coming to Neyland, which is a lot of those guys for the first time, looked really, really nice. So that's all the stuff we feel much better about. There are still some things, and I particularly along the offensive line, on the right side of that offensive line, which are still huge, if I do it backwards, question marks right now for Georgia. Whether it is at right tackle, where it was just kind of Ernest Green was in there some. It was Michael Uni. Finally, at the end, Kirby Smart said Bo Hughley was the guy at the end that could cause stability, but he's had his chances this season and hadn't earned that starting spot as well. And then you had to start Dontrell Glover, the true freshman, at right guard. And Kirby said he's a blessing. He still didn't have he still looked like a freshman out there at times. So that right side of the offensive line, still big concern right now.
Yeah, but they have some teaching tape now, and now you can see what these guys do under the lights. I also thought it was interesting. Kirby said that he may have worked him too hard in practice.
Yeah.
So I wonder if the head coach kind of stepped back and said, boy, I don't know, maybe if we were fresh, because we know that Georgia is very physical during the week. It's a long season. Kirby believes you got to hit to stay fresh. Not all teams take that approach. And I think maybe the head coach, just like last summer, he kept them off their feet a little bit more, and we didn't see the foot injuries. So I wonder a little bit about the preparation and what the head coach takes out of this as far as preparation, trying to keep these guys healthy. Ernest Green, it's a big question mark, Cody. It's not a video game. They don't just get to hit the restart button and everybody goes back to 100 in health. These are going to be lingering injuries that have to be managed in the training room. And there's only so much that can be done in some cases. Ernest Green wants to be out there and be at his best. That was one of the keys before the start of the season. Well, we found out that he's not. And now we're having to see Georgia go into some guys that are deeper on the depth chart. This is why you recruit well. This is why you coach him up. This is why iron sharpens iron. They're going against great guys in practice every single day. So their learning curve is shorter than maybe teams that don't go against elite competition every day. Georgia practices are typically harder than the games. And Kirby said that. We felt like we had an edge in the fourth quarter, and they sure seemed to in the third quarter. But boy, that fourth quarter, Cody, it was a wrestling match. This is going to be a continuing issue that Georgia is going to have to coach around. You're not going to be the best at every position. You're not going to do everything great. Now, the running backs, they answered the bell. London Humphreys and Zachariah Branch answered the bell. Not much from the tight ends, kind of disappointing. Not much after the catch. We saw them get tripped up, although Oscar Delp had the kung fu move on the end of a run. That was pretty impressive. But we really didn't see the tight ends make an impact in the passing game. Gunner Stockton brings you enough mobility to keep the defense honest. He showed poise. He won the game. He gained confidence. So that's a W for the offense, but there's no doubt there's things that other defenses are going to try to exploit that Georgia's going to have to try to work around this season.
Yeah, and one of the other concerns that will come up, it was razzle-dazzle, brazzle all day for Tennessee. Some of those cornerbacks in those one-on-one spots just missed the opportunity to make plays on the ball. We saw Ellis Robinson early in the game. There was a pass interference where if it's like in basketball, if I'm going to foul you, you're not going to get the and one. I'm going to make sure they probably should have just tackled him at that point. But you also saw late in the game, you saw a one-on-one right there, and Georgia fails again, and Brazzell gets another long touchdown. That was Daniel Harris on the coverage late in the game. It's one of those things where I've watched enough practice in the NFL. You could see AJ Terrell for the Falcons out there. He'll get beat sometimes. You're going to get beat sometimes. That's the life of being a cornerback. So how much of a concern are those one-on-one, one-off play, who's the better man on this play? How much does that concern you, the cornerback play?
Well, it's a concern because it means Georgia's not as dominant as we hoped. You'd like to think that because on both occasions, or especially on Harris's play, he was in position. I'm wondering a little bit about Ellis Robinson's speed. He was behind the receiver. Okay, that was part of the problem. And we heard a lot about his ball skills. To your point, he didn't show him there. Now, look, that's a tough play. You're running with your back to the line of scrimmage against a 6'5" receiver. Right. That's tough. And you got to high point the ball and time it perfect at full speed, looking up into the sky, 45 yards away. Anybody that's played center field and slow pitch softball knows that could be kind of tough. Sun's shining kind of bright, those big boxes. That's a tough play. Tennessee's accustomed to that stadium. They've worked in that stadium. They've worked that play. There's a comfort zone. Say this for Joey Football, as they call him. He throws a nice deep ball and gives his receiver a chance. Brazzell's going to do that to a lot of people. My concern, Cody, where's the pressure? They only sacked the quarterback one time. We know that Georgia has a lot of pressure packages, but we thought that Chris Coe and Ello, the transfer from Army, maybe these guys could find some ways to bring pressure. They weren't able to get consistent pressure, and that gave the quarterback time enough to take that drop and throw that deep ball. So it's a two-part thing here. Yeah, part of it's on the corners for not playing the ball right, but part of it's on the defensive line in the front seven for not either pushing the pocket back into the quarterback or getting the sort of pressure on him where he's got to think about it. Because we've seen Georgia before ring the bell. You hit these quarterbacks enough times, they get a little gun shy. This guy wasn't gun shy. He took a pretty good hit from Raylan Wilson in the open field, showed a lot of toughness. I think you got to give the Tennessee quarterback some credit.
Yeah, he was pretty impressive, especially compared to you. Everybody all offseason, it's going to be a downgrade because Nico's got no. It's been an upgrade. Georgia was credited 1 sack on the day. It did come from Chris Cole, but like you said, whether it was just Aguilar getting the ball out quick or just keeping him off balance, it was one of those things. And speaking of that, the defensive worries that you have, is it at all curtailed by like Tennessee what they're doing is so different than everybody else. The way they're going to play fast and the way they can spread you out. Other teams aren't going to necessarily be able to replicate something like that. Do you feel that way about the defensive effort? Like, you're not going to see Tennessee. I mean, you may see them again, but you're not going to see many teams like Tennessee.
I'm pretty sure that Josh Heupel didn't score more than 17 points or have a quarterback throw for over 200 yards in the 3 previous meetings. So the concern is it's the same Tennessee offense. It's the same Josh Heupel. It's not the same Georgia defense at this stage of the season. Now, remember, This is the earliest they've played this game since 1995. Typically, when you play Tennessee, you're further into the season, and I think the defense is probably a little more settled in. I'd venture to say it's probably harder to play a hurry-up team on the road early in the season because you're still getting comfortable in your defense. You're still learning your personnel. Guys are still learning when to get, lined up. And all of a sudden, you got a time test here because Tennessee runs more plays than any program in the country. So you'd much rather play this game later once your guys are a little more veteran, a little more savvy, understand the assignments, line up a little bit quicker. So this was a really difficult time to play Tennessee early in the season with a really young football team, a lot of new guys in a lot of new places.
Yeah, we'll talk more about in Boots on the Ground. I've got some video to show you about defensive adjustments and some of that as well. But one of the other things that it does keep in mind for me, I think back to last year and the Kentucky game, and you went on the road for the first time in the SEC, and how tough it's going to be on a team, but how much that team will grow from there. That Georgia last year was not defined by how they played against Kentucky, whether offensive, and it was a completely different game, right? 13-12 versus 44-41. But we saw Georgia grow from that game. I do keep that in mind, that this is the first road test, and this is not by far the finished product of what Georgia will be in 2025.
Right. And so now you wonder a little bit when you look at Alabama and you say, okay, Alabama's been on the road. They played at Florida State. They played in a hostile environment. So they've got that game under their belt. And they're coming off a game against Wisconsin, where it looks like they've kind of put it all together. I think Ty Simpson only had 4 or 5 incompletions, Cody, and I believe 2 or 3 of those passes were dropped. Ryan Williams was back in the lineup. I think he had about 5 catches, 165 yards. He's good too. Razzle was one problem, right? Ryan's going to be another.
We saw that last year.
Who's going to cover him? Is Daniel Harris going to play a little bit tougher? Is Dalen Everett going to close up that cushion he gives a little bit? Because early on, a lot of those passes, where was the defense? We're not used to seeing Kirby's defenses give up that much cushion. I understand you got to feel it out and understand. But Josh Heupel had all that scripted. He knew exactly what he wanted to do. It was like he was in Georgia's huddle. So now the challenge for Glenn Schumann and Kirby Smart is to change things up a little bit. And that can be hard because you say, man, we've had all the success doing it this way. Well, guess what? The whole offseason, they're studying you. The whole offseason, they're looking at your alignments and they have a good idea what you're going to do. So I think there's going to be a challenge for the defensive staff to get their act together a little bit, come up with some pressure packages that can be effective on Ty Simpson. This guy's good. This guy's every bit as accurate as Gunner, and he runs the ball a little bit too. So they have a version of Gunner Stockton there. They have their Gunner Stockton and Ty Simpson. They feel just as good about him as Georgia does about Gunner right now. Now they're going on the road. They've never played. Alabama's never beaten Kirby between the hedges. So there's a lot at stake here. There's going to be a lot of pressure here. I don't know which team has more pressure on them, but I know that it's going to be an unbelievable environment. Both teams have played in it now, and we're going to see how they handle the adjustments. Georgia's going to have some major adjustments coming out of this game. They got exposed in a lot of areas that teams like Austin Peay and Marshall could not expose them in.
For sure. Yeah, talk about Ty Simpson, 4 touchdowns last week, 382 yards. 2 of them were to Ryan Williams, 1 for 75 yards. So, yeah, there are some big-time numbers that are going to be coming into Athens. And you talked about working the players really hard, Kirby Smart, because this Tennessee rivalry is important to him. He said, maybe I worked him too hard. You think this Alabama game is going to be important to him and that record and how they all felt walking off the field last time against Alabama? So they're going to be working hard. It'll be interesting to see how he bounces that, especially with an off week here. We're going to continue this conversation about the Georgia defense in just a minute as we do Boots on the Ground. But for now, this is On the Beat, presented by Ingalls.
And it's the first title in team history. Here it is. And lightning strikes twice, back-to-back championships. 3 in a row. They've done it again.
Where did those cheese come from? relax. They're from Ingles.
Can I eat this now?
All right, we're back here on the beat and excited to share some of the video we got with you on the field level in Neyland Stadium in Knoxville this week. It's boots on the ground. All right, so the first thing I want to show you, we're going to do a little throwback first time. So the first video was a video I shot back in 2023, Georgia at Knoxville at Neyland Stadium. And it was a very first play of the game. Tennessee takes off for a 75-yard touchdown run. This was Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann. I love watching their interaction. They're kind of going back, what are we going to change? What are we doing here? What's different? And then very same thing, 75-yard drive, at least the first quarter of this year's game. And take a look at the video, almost from the same angle. These two guys, now Glenn Schumann, because they now have iPads, got a little more information he's looking at on the sideline. But then he and Kirby Smart, what are we going to adjust? So after the 2023 game, after that initial run, they only gave up 6 points the rest of the day. Now, they did give up 34 more points after that first drive to Tennessee this week. So, Mike, I'm interested to hear from you. We've been talking about kind of the adjustments that the Georgia defense has to make, but it's one of those things where Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann are constantly trying to figure out answers against this Tennessee offense.
Well, they got to figure out their personnel. They got to see who's who. They got to sort it out. They got to find a safety to play next to KJ Bolden that they feel good about. They got to see how good Joanel Aguero has gotten in coverage. We know he can come up and smack you against the run. They need to find out how well these linebackers can cover. And they need to kind of have an idea what the other team's trying to do. You know, Tennessee kind of beat them to the punch, throwing the ball on first down. We know that Georgia wants to take away the run. But I think teams are getting a beat on that, saying, man, ain't no way we're running on first down. We're just wasting it down, running into the line of scrimmage on Georgia. We got to get aggressive. So there's a lot of chess going on. And then there's a lot going on with the chess pieces. Who can do what? Who are your best cornerbacks? Who is your best safety to line up next to KJ Bolden? I think that's a glaring question, is the safety position next to KJ Bolden. I don't think there's an adequate answer at this time. Kirby Smart talked about the middle of the field not being there on occasion, right? The linebackers, we know there's a lot of them. Who's going to do what, when? The defensive line, other than Christian Miller and Griffin, who else is going to bring a pulse? Who else is going to make a push, make a play? So you have some young guys, haven't done it before. Now they've been through the fire. Now they understand the level of intensity. Who's going to emerge and take their game up a level, Cody? Because one thing we know about Kirby Smart's Georgia defensive teams, they get better as the year goes on.
And we did see some adjustments. I mean, after the first quarter, you had punt, interception for Tennessee before they finally hit a big play again and got going offensively again. So there were changes made that slowed them down. It just didn't last the whole game. And like you said, still got to figure out personnel to keep those big plays that happened late in the second half from happening again. All right, so last week on Boots on the Ground, we showed you Kirby Smart and Nate Frazier did a little film study together. It's interesting this week, Gunner Stockton gets sacked. The ball comes out late in the third quarter of this game, and Kirby Smart, well, it's actually in the fourth quarter here. So you can see from the backside, Monroe Freeland gets beat at left tackle. Ball comes out, and Kirby Smart, as Gunner Stockton comes to the sideline, he has a chat with him. Now, it's interesting to me because going back, that's how I watched that play. So then I had to go back and watch what happened on TV, and you see Freeland get beat, and Gunner Stockton was hanging in the pocket that time. It wasn't one of those where he had those quick feet and was eager to scramble out of the pocket. Stands in the pocket, and then he finally gets hit and the ball comes out. So it's interesting. They watched it on the big screen, just like Kirby did last week with Nate Frazier. But I feel like this is what you wanted Gunner Stockton to do, is hang in the pocket a little bit. Mike, I'm interested to get your take there, because Kirby did say don't have such quick feet, but that time he did stand in there and got nailed from behind.
You got to have an internal clock. You got to take a look at the formation across from you, who might be coming, where the pressure might come. You've got to be able to anticipate that. Like Jake Fromm would tell us, I get out of trouble before I get in trouble. Now, a guy like Gunner has the kind of feet where he could maybe slide, run a little bit out, buy himself a little time out in the flats, and make that downfield throw. But sitting in the pocket that long, you could tell he just kind of held it a little too long. He was waiting, but the clock's got to go off, and he's got to feel that. And that play was a matter of not having a lot of repetition and a lot of experience. If that's a second-year quarterback, a second-year Gunner Stockton, that probably doesn't happen, Cody.
Yeah, it's interesting because, again, you talk about the clock. Kirby may have said this guy was open at this point, and maybe it's been a read that he missed there. Just interesting video to kind of watch Kirby using that big board to his advantage in 2 straight games right there after turnovers. All right, so we've done a lot of concern stuff, but how about just the fun stuff? The way the game ended, ended on a referee, overturning a call. So I was on the field right in the middle of the celebration, and just the emotion coming out from these Georgia players. First time in this rivalry for Zach Branch, and he was all about it. Oscar Delp right there says, never lost to Tennessee, 4-0, 4-0. He was excited that he has kept that record against the Vols. Micah Morris, Stacy Searles giving a big hug right here. That was a cool moment. So just kind of fun to be in the middle of it all after all of that. Georgia, sometimes I feel back in the Mark Richt era, they would celebrate after every win. Then sometimes under Kirby Smart, they're just jogging to the locker room like, oh, ho hum, we just won. This one, they relish this one a little bit. You could tell.
A lot of new guys, a lot of new faces, a lot of guys that had never been in there. Kirby told us 54% of the players on the roster, first or second year players. So a lot of these second year guys, how many snaps did they really get in Neyland Stadium? If they're in their second year, they hadn't been in that stadium before, right? They played at home last year. So this is a new experience for more than half of the football team. A lot of these guys in key positions, they hadn't played roles this big before. They were backups. They were special teams. Now it's their time to hold the line, to do what Georgia does, which is beat Tennessee. 9-win streak in the series, Cody. That ties the longest streak ever for either team. We remember Tennessee won 9 in a row, end of the Johnny Majors era, end of the Philip Fulmer era, before Mark Richt turned that around. So this rivalry's had a streaky nature to it. Next year is going to be just as challenging. Kirby will be determined to have the longest win streak against Tennessee, because as he reminded all of us, he never beat him. We kept trying to say, hey, how did you feel to pick off Peyton Manning? What do you remember from when you played? He said, I lost. That's what I remember. And the way he said it, you got the feeling that he's still pretty upset about that.
Yeah, a cool moment here with the son, Andrew Smart. You saw Kirby Smart talking to Rodney Garner earlier on that as they were shaking hands. Garner, former Georgia coach, been around the SEC forever and ever. So really good stuff there. Boots on the ground. It's fun to catch some of that. And what a privilege to have this job to be able to be down there to capture those moments. All right, so that's boots on the ground. Now time to check out the whole SEC. We'll do it with Mike's 30,000-foot view. So Dogs flying high after this weekend. There's a couple SEC programs not flying so high after all of this. Interesting week around the league, Mike.
Well, let's start at the top or the bottom, depending on how you look at it, with LSU beating Florida 20-10 in Baton Rouge. DJ Lagway, 5 interceptions, Cody.
Yeah.
The guy's just not healthy. It's kind of interesting, though, that Florida only lost by 10 with 5 interceptions. You would have thought maybe this would be a blowout. And I'm beginning to wonder, how great is LSU? A little bit of luster coming off that opening week win at Clemson after they go down to Georgia Tech and struggled against Troy. Maybe these Tigers aren't so beatable after all. We need to keep an eye on Baton Rouge. And as for Florida, they got to get right. There's a lot of rumors circulating about Billy Napier and his coaching security. That can have an effect on a team. Last year, the Gators turned it around midseason. I'd never seen anything like it. It was a great credit to Billy Napier. But with the schedule that they have ahead, that's going to be extremely difficult. I believe they play Carson Beck in Miami this week.
Oh, yeah.
And then comes Texas and Texas A&M. Boy, that's a murderer's row. And let's not overlook Mississippi State these days. How about Mississippi State winning 63-0 over Alcorn State? You can say what you want, but I think Jeff Levy's got it going on. Remember, he beat the number 12 team in the nation, the defending Big 12 champions, the preseason Big 12 favorites, Arizona State. They did it with a goal line stand, and they did it with a late-minute drive. So let's see how the Maroon Bulldogs shape up. Remember, Georgia's got a road trip to Starkville later this year. I don't know if I'd have that one in ink. I might have it in a light colored pen. I still feel pretty good about it, but it's not going to be a pushover. Lane Kiffin, hey, he had to go without Austin Simmons. I was surprised. Put the backup in there, still found a way to beat Sam Pittman and the Hogs, took care of business at home. Ole Miss, yeah, they're coming between the hedges too, and they look pretty good. I don't know that the defense is as good, but they have more balance on their offense, and they still have an explosive passing game. Austin Simmons, it's an ankle. He'll be back by then. So don't assume anything. Texas A&M, thank you, Texas A&M. If you're the SEC, send Texas A&M's Mike Elko a thank you note for going into South Bend and beating Notre Dame 41-40. The Irish already with 2 losses. We saw Carson Beck and Miami take them down earlier. Notre Dame 1 game away potentially from being eliminated from the playoff picture, Cody. They got in last year with that loss to Northern Illinois, but these are 2 big losses, and it's a great flex for the SEC that Texas A&M was able to go on the road and win that game 41-40. Big win for the conference there. And South Carolina, Lenora Sellers, hey, Diego Pavia says, the heck with that. How about me? I'm Superman. Vanderbilt goes into South Carolina, wins 31-6. That's not supposed to happen. It's under the lights. Where's Sandstorm? No. And Kirby Smart told us. I can't remember the press conference, but he said it under his breath about Vanderbilt having over 20 seats. Could Vanderbilt be a threat? Vanderbilt? They are in the top 20. But no, Georgia doesn't play them. Just saying. For entertainment purposes, let's watch Vanderbilt from week to week. Remember, we talked about, so hard to go on the road. First game, Georgia on the road. Hey, South Carolina is a tough place to play. Vanderbilt went in there. I talked to somebody about it. They said, Mike, every game's like a road game for Vanderbilt, even in their own stadium. The other team's fans outnumber them. Those guys get off on that stuff. They like playing on the road. So I'm going to keep my eye peeled on the Vanderbilt Commodores. Auburn, big matchup coming up this week. We saw John Mateer, the Heisman Trophy frontrunner. He goes up there, gets a little of that Northeast publicity. They pound Temple. We see Auburn take care of business. Predictable letdown game against an in-state opponent. South Alabama won by a couple touchdowns. This week, it's Auburn and Oklahoma. Will the real contenders stand up? This is a big game for Hugh Freeze and Brent Venables this coming weekend in the SEC.
Really good stuff right there. And all of that, we didn't mention Arch Manning. Oh, poor little Arch, 11-25, 114 yards.
11 of 25. Somebody asked Steve Sarkisian. I saw this quote. I'm not kidding you. Somebody said he says he looks hurt by the look on his face. And Sark made some random reference to, I don't know what face you guys make when you're in the bathroom. I mean, where did that come from? I think we can safely say that Steve Sarkisian did not appreciate the question. And I think we can safely say that Texas fans do not appreciate the way their team is playing. Now, fortunately for them, they got a little bit of a cushion here with this schedule. I'm not saying any league office took care of anything, although they do have a bye week before Georgia. But they're going to go to Florida. I'm not so sure I'm going to give that. I don't know where Florida's going to be. I don't know where Texas is going to be. I will say this. That Texas game doesn't look quite as intimidating as it did at the start of the season for Georgia.
Very, very true. You talk about asking the tough questions and not appreciating the question. Mike, the show is called On the Beat. You have been on the beat in the Southeastern Conference for years and years, which is why I want to get your opinion on the first question asked of Brian Kelly in the LSU press conference this week. Like you said, LSU gets the win 20-10 over Florida. First question, we will play this whole exchange for pretty long, but I think it's worth it. The whole exchange, I'm interested to hear Mike's opinion.
Brian in the back, I know you love these immediate post-game sessions, but what are you seeing with your offense?
Stop. Really? Is that the first question? We won the game 20-10. Try another question. What do you want me to tell you? I just laid it out for you. We played the game to win the game. We played the game to win the game.
All right. How about third down then? What is going on with third down?
It's one game. Last game, we were great on third down. You're looking at this from the wrong perspective. LSU won the football game. Won the game. I don't know what you want from me. What do you want? You want us to win 70-0 against Florida to keep you happy?
No, I think people want to know why you can't run the ball, quite honestly.
We can run the ball. Did you see the last play of the game? That's all you need. You just need one. There's ridiculous questions. And I'm getting tired of it. That football team just worked their tail off to get an SEC win, and you want to know what's wrong. You know what? You're spoiled. You're spoiled. This team is 17-1 at night. 17-1. Give them some respect. How about that? Give them some respect instead of micro-analyzing every little thing. This is ridiculous. For a group of seasoned reporters, that kind of question is so out of line.
All right, Mike. So, was he out of line?
No, that's how he felt. Like I said, we don't go to the zoo to watch the tiger sleep. We want to see the tiger roar. Now, interestingly enough, Kirby Smart takes a different tact. He's not saying he's mad. He's like, hey, I almost feel like we ought to apologize. They deserve to win the game. Kirby's figured it out. You got to be your own worst critic. You take the ball out of the media's hands when you're your own worst critic. And then we all go, well, I mean, you just said that. So well, actually, Kirby, your guys played pretty good. It's like reverse psychology. But it tells you the pressure cooker that Brian Kelly is under. And he's trying to train his fans and say, hey, look, we told you all year how good the SEC was. You guys got to believe us. Forget the betting line. I know there's a lot of circulation down there in Louisiana, gambling money, but forget the betting line. Just win the game. This is like the NFL now, the parity, the NIL. We just talked about Vanderbilt going on the road and beating South Carolina by more than 3 touchdowns. That's not supposed to happen. They beat Alabama last year. That's not supposed to happen, Cody. And so it's a different game, and fans have to adjust. You're not going to roll over everybody. My goodness, Georgia only beat Austin Peay 28-6. And what was Kirby's response? Well, that's good. They had a little adversity. He rolls with it. Let's mix it up a little bit. Yeah, let these guys know they got work to do. Yeah, this defense has got work to do after giving up 41 points and not. Kirby manages it different. Brian Kelly is a fiery guy. I love the way he does his press conferences, and that's who he really is, and that's what he's telling that team in the locker room. So that's the message and the narrative that he wants out there in the media for the fans.
Yeah, for me, I'm kind of 50-50. Should that be the first question after a win? Hey, talk about all the things you did wrong. I don't know if it's the first question for Kirby. Maybe that's a Monday. You've had a chance to look at because Kirby also is not going to give you a great answer on. I haven't seen the tape. Will be his answer. But Mondays you can say you've seen the tape. So I'm kind of 50-50. But like you said, sometimes, and I will tell you this, if you listen to all these press conferences on DawgNation's YouTube channel, I'm going to ask some stupid questions because sometimes I'm going to get a better answer out of it. So Sometimes I know that I know the answer, and I'm asking I'm asking a stupid question, but sometimes I do need to show you a little emotion. So I'm not mad at that.
Oversimplify it a little bit.
Right.
Let the coach say it. We know it, but let's hear what Kirby says. So those are actually really good questions, and they lead to really good clips.
Yeah, if we get some emotion out of these guys, that's what we're always after, and we certainly got it there from Brian Kelly. All right, we got still more to come here on the show. We're going to get back to Georgia football. We're going to take a look back at our preseason superlatives, who we thought was going to be here, there, and everywhere, because we are through the first quarter of the season. So we'll take a quick look back. We'll do that in just a minute, but do want to ask you to subscribe to our DawgNation YouTube channel. You can do it by clicking the subscribe and the bell, the notifications you can get right here on the channel as well. So anytime we're putting up that boots on the ground video right after the game, or you want to hear Kirby Smart's whole press conference, you can find it all right there on our DawgNation YouTube channel. All right, Mike, so we're going to wrap up the show this way. It was just before the season started. We did our kind of fun superlative segment where we went through and we talked about who might be the best dog for this or that or whatever. So we'll go through quickly because we are through 3 games, which is a quarter of the regular season. So after the first quarter, we knew this was going to change. Kind of interesting. All right, so we said who is most likely to convert a 3rd and 7. You said Zach Branch, Cash Jones, Lawson Lucky. Zach Branch and Lawson Lucky, I believe, have the 2nd and 3rd most first downs on this team so far. That looks like a smart pick.
Well, Zachary Branch, like I said, they haven't covered him yet. I mean, I think he's obviously the biggest addition to the team. He's an impact player. He came up with a big 2-point conversion. He's also had a couple of the explosive plays that have otherwise been missing. So, real pivotal player. Been a little disappointed we haven't seen more of Lawson Lucky in the past game. Kirby Smart did tell us, though, that he didn't feel like there was a whole lot happening with the runs after the catch. And, that's an area that Lawson's got to get better at if he wants to get those opportunities from Gunner.
All right, most likely to get a sack on a 3rd and 7. You said Chris Cole, Elijah Griffin, Raylan Wilson. I said C.J. Allen. You look like Nostradamus at this point so far.
Yeah, well, Chris Cole did get the sack against Tennessee. Look, he's just a freak. I don't think I don't think many people would have missed on that one. I mean, the guy's unbelievable. C.J. Allen is a Mike linebacker, as you noted, and maybe they just haven't shown him in the pressure package yet. Cody, every game's a different matchup. First two games, they really didn't do much with the pressure package. So far, we've really only seen one game with that pressure package in effect.
Right, and Tennessee was getting the ball, rid of the ball pretty quickly. Most attractive red zone target. This was interesting because the red zone was an issue against Tennessee, right? Too many settling for field goals. You said Oscar Delp, Colby Young, Noah Thomas. Not one of those guys has a touchdown yet.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, we haven't really seen the tight ends really involved, and we haven't really seen those jump balls in the end zone. We've seen a lot of pounding it in. So Kirby Smart's team still building its identity. There's been some game circumstance involved down there. They just haven't elected to take those shots with Gunner throwing it into the end zone quite so much yet.
Offensive fan favorite, names we threw out, Gunner Stockton, Nate Frazier, Cash Jones. I think Gunner's it right so far.
No question, Gunner's very popular after becoming the ninth straight Georgia quarterback, or leading the ninth straight win over Tennessee. And the way he did it, I mean, again, that was an oil painting moment. That throw he made on 4th and 7 from the 28 couldn't have been thrown any better. I mean, that's putting it in a bucket. Great credit to London Humphreys, but that throw was amazing under poise and under pressure, and in that game situation. If I could redo it, I'd probably say Zachariah Branch is emerging a little bit more of a fan favorite than I would have expected.
Yeah, I think so for sure. He's electric. Old dog, new trick was the thing we put out there. You said Dylan Bell. Have not seen that yet. 7 catches for just 21 yards on the year. Actually has negative rushing yards because they throw it to him behind the line of scrimmage, or he gets the ball behind the line of scrimmage so much. I said Micah Morris. So still some time. And then on the defensive side was Jonel Aguero and Christian Miller. So those guys Aguero seemed to have his best game as a Bulldog, although Kirby Smart found some moments he could have been better. But it is interesting to watch kind of some of those old dogs. Again, early in the season, we just haven't seen that pan out yet.
Yeah, I mean, Dylan Bell did have a really big 3rd and 7 conversion in that game. And, on the opening drive of the second half, he was one of the guys that carried the ball. So we're seeing him in a versatile role. Maybe not a lot yet. I think, again, this is going to be based on matchups and the health of different players and things that they're trying to accomplish. I think the running back room is deeper and better than I thought it might be. I had some skepticism about that, but I feel like the running back room is better than I thought it would be. So maybe Dylan Bell, maybe not called upon quite as much. In the pass game, we really haven't seen a whole lot of the pass game yet. I mean, we've seen one game against Tennessee, and that's pretty much it. So I think there's still a lot of different layers of this pass game that we're going to see before the end of the year.
Yeah, wrinkles are definitely coming. Fantastic freshman, we said. You had C.J. Wiley on offense. I thought Bo Walker. Neither guy has really, had some cleanup duty. Haven't signed yet, but both of us hit it on Elijah Griffin. I think Elijah Griffin has been a very pleasant surprise so far, even for high expectations that he had coming in.
Yeah, big time player, and it's hard to make an impact as a freshman. I mean, I don't even know if what did Wiley get targeted maybe once or twice this season. We just haven't seen Gunner do a lot of the throwing it up yet. We know he did really well in the scrimmages, so we know it's in him. But again, this is a team that's going to grow as the season progresses, and these players really have to be well versed in the package that they're in, and they have to go show Kirby Smart how physical they can be in the blocking game and earn that trust. So I still think C.J. Wiley will emerge before the end of the year.
Yeah, and the offense, really on offense, it's been about the offensive linemen for the freshmen so far. We've seen Gaston and Glover get in there a little bit. All right, best all around. You said Zach Branch. Boy, you weren't wrong.
Yeah, I'd stick with that. I mean, this guy's uncoverable. He's dynamic. I think he gives you a spark in the return game as well. Again, those explosive plays, if there's an element to the Georgia team that needs to evolve, it's the explosive plays. I mean, we've seen that Gunner is disciplined enough to lead long drives, but it sure is a lot easier when you can score from anywhere on the field and you don't have to maybe plot it down there, set up the play action. I know that's the bread and butter, but every now and then you'd like to see number one get the ball in the flats and turn upfield. He's already done that a couple times this year.
Yeah, for mine, I had Nate Frazier, and you talk about the explosive plays. That play, his last play of the game, right, that he got them all down there, that looked so good and what we'd expect. But I just don't know. He's separated himself. He really hasn't. That whole running back room, I think of as a room right now, and not Nate Frazier and the other guys.
Yeah, I mean, Dwight Phillips, Chauncey Billups, obviously Josh McCray. I mean, these guys, Chauncey Bowens, these guys have really, come together, and they're starting to get more defined roles, I think. And I like the way that they're being substituted in there. I like the way that they're being used. It's a long season, and it's hard to keep that position healthy. That's a high impact position. So far, so good for the Bulldogs as far as the way these guys have played and the progress that they've shown through 3 games.
All right, so we'll peek at these superlatives again as we get later on in the year. But I thought at least through the first 3 games, kind of fun to look, and things will change again, and we will look more right and we will look more wrong as the season goes on. Bye week this week, Mike. Do you do anything to decompress just as a beat writer?
Oh, we covered a little basketball. Mike White's got the ball bouncing in here. You got an NCAA tournament team coming back and trying to get to the tournament again this year. We might take a little look ahead at West Johnson baseball recruiting class, but certainly always something going on with Georgia sports. And then just the rest of the SEC. It's great theater. I mean, truly more parity than ever. We'll see how the polls shake out. And Georgia, I think, pretty firm in there in the top 5, but maybe put an ear to the ground in Tuscaloosa, Cody. Hear what they're saying over there. See what they're saying about Ty Simpson and Kalen DeBoer. Try to get a read on this Georgia-Alabama game. Looks like a classic coming in.
It's going to be so much fun. We get night game atmosphere in Sanford Stadium. It is going to be a great one. But I guess the beat goes on, right? Always something to cover for Mike Griffith. Mike, we appreciate it. It's been a fun week. Had fun on the river on Saturday. Wasn't that a great time?
It was really unique. I mean, to be on the Tennessee River before the game in that environment, and being able to do the pregame show with Kaylee Mansell, and seeing Brandon there and Connor there and Jeff there. A lot of dog fans, a lot of the people that go on our DawgNation cruise every spring with Royal Caribbean. They're like, hey, wait a minute, this ship's not as big. Well, the food was good, the drinks were flowing, and as you said, the good times were there to be had in anticipation of yet another Georgia win over Tennessee.
And that T-shirt feels so much better when Georgia pulls out the win over the hated Tennessee Volunteers. All right, we will see you next week right back here on The Beat.